Hello again everyone, this is Mark for Health and Fitness Over 40, and today we'll be talking about training principles including progressive overload and specificity. Hey everyone, in this video we're going to look at the concept of training principles. The principles of training that we're going to cover will make sure that you can walk out of each training session having accomplished something and having made the most of your time. Today we're going to look at the purpose of the principles of training, and then we'll go into some key principles including progressive overload, specificity, reversibility, variety training, thresholds, and the warm-up and cool-down. Okay, so training for a sport or goal is all well and good, but if the programs aren't tailored to meet your specific demands, you can be sure that you're not going to get the most out of your training sessions. So these principles will help you make sure that your training sessions are tailored to specific requirements and that you're training at the right workload, you have the correct rest periods, and the actual sessions are timed correctly. If you use all of these principles, then you will see bigger improvements at a faster rate than if you were simply just to start exercise with no direction. So let's jump into these principles. And our first principle is progressive overload. Some say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Well, maybe whoever said that knew a thing or two about progressive overload, or maybe not. This principle is about gradually increasing the exercise load an athlete undertakes in order to see continuous improvements. Now, our bodies are amazing. They adapt very quickly. And if the frequency and intensity of your training that you do remains constant, your body will catch up to this workload and it will halt any further progress. Basically, there's no need for it to change because it can already do what you're giving it to do. So in order to see different and better results, you must change your workload. For aerobic training, this might mean an increase in duration or distance of training, whereas for resistance training, this might mean higher reps or an increased weight or more time under tension. Next, we have specificity. So, put simply, if you were studying for a maths exam, you wouldn't sit down and write a history essay. That would be nonsensical. And the same goes for your training goals. You have to train specifically to the energy system and skill requirements that are needed for your goals, and even your position if you play a team sport. For an aerobic athlete, such as a long distance cycler, this would mean training for longer periods of time with no breaks and focusing on muscular endurance, particularly for the legs. For an anaerobic athlete, such as, let's say, a 100-meter sprinter, this would mean training for shorter periods of time with more intensity and focusing on specific muscle groups. Again, in this one, focusing on legs. All right, so our next principle of training is what's called reversibility. And You all will have experienced this. It's what happens when you, say, go on holiday from, or when we used to go on holiday from school and come back, and your brain feels like mush, and 2 plus 2 starts to equal 5. Now, for athletes, it's the loss of adaptations that they gained during training because of the long break. Basically, it's use it or lose it. This principle happens when you're injured and have to take time off, and also for those that have or do seasonal sports, when you have the off-season period. So during this recovery period, adaptations tend to be lost at a similar rate to which they were gained. So, for instance, if you gained a kilo of muscle in 2 weeks, a little bit ambitious, but it's an analogy. This muscle will then be lost very quickly if we stopped training. Aerobic adaptations tend to be lost within 4 to 6 weeks. Now, this can be somewhat prevented with 2 minimal intensity training sessions a week. And anaerobic adaptations are lost at a bit of a faster rate, generally within 1 or 2 weeks, but again can be slowed down by training at least a low level just once a week. Okay, so next we've got variety. This principle serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it prevents boredom and keeps you engaged and motivated to train. And secondly, it ensures that you are training holistically. This means that every muscle group or fitness component is covered and different muscle groups and energy systems are given a break. So with aerobic athletes, they would alternate between doing different aerobic training methods. Simply put, running for, let's say, 30 minutes every session could cause disinterest and limited improvement. Similarly, anaerobic athletes would alternate between different anaerobic training methods. Now, let's have a look at training thresholds. These are simply the zones at which you need to train if you want to see improvement and adaptation in the necessary energy system. So basically, anaerobic and aerobic athletes have to train at a different percentage of their maximum heart rate to keep seeing improvements. Quick notes, very simple way to calculate maximum heart rate, 220 minus your age, nice and easy. So let's take an example. If you are a marathon runner and want to see improvements in your cardiovascular system performance, you have to train between 60 and 80% of your maximum heart rate. Now, if you train below this point, you'll see no improvement. But above it, you'll be training in the anaerobic zone, which again, for a marathon runner, is not really going to confer any benefits. The anaerobic training zone is between 80 and 90% of maximum heart rate. Again, this is where sprinters, weightlifters, people of or with that kind of training, this is where they will sit and they will train. Below this, you'll be in the aerobic zone, but above this isn't ideal either. Basically, it's where lactate starts to form in the muscles and you fatigue super quickly, so you cannot train for long enough for the adaptations to occur. And of course, training at the higher end of each zone, just under the thresholds, is where most adaptations will occur. The final principle that we need to look through is the warm up and cool down. The warm-up happens at the beginning of each session, and there are two phases. The first is a general warm-up. This is where you generally increase the heart rate, respiration rate, and prepare the muscles for the anticipated demands of the session. Doing this means that you'll be able to move faster and more powerfully. So again, getting the most out of your sessions. Then we have a more specific warm-up, and here you have to perform the movements that are super similar to those that you have to do in the session. So for example, a netballer, they could run around the court for 20 minutes, or they could do some lunges and tuck jumps, which will get the mind thinking about those movements straight from the start. The cooldown simply lowers all of the things that were raised in the warm-up, so the heart rate, the respiration rate, etc. And it's important for injury prevention and to start to prepare you for the next session. It also helps to lessen DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, and that's by beginning to remove built up lactic acid that's accumulated in the training session. Now that's it for today. It's a basic overview, and there'll be more, we'll go into more detail on this in the future. So let's have a quick recap before I sign off. We looked at why we actually care about the principles of training. They give the training sessions a direction and a focus that ensure that we are making the most improvements possible. Then we looked at the principles of progressive overload, specificity, reversibility, variety training, thresholds, and the warm-up and cool down. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you all soon.